Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who has helped me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature John Brink for a second episode where he continues to discuss with us his ADHD, and he expounds on his book, ADHD Unlocked. John has experienced a great life where he is and always has been capitalizing on his strengths. Schooling he learned did not teach him what he needed, but life experience did. He speaks very passionately of attitude, work ethic, and your passion moving forward. It's a great opportunity to learn from those who are, some people use the term neurodivergent, but he's moving forward by learning what he needs to learn, and everybody is employable. John is very succinct and very resolved in telling everyone neurodivergent people are hireable. They have a talent that many people do not have. Marty, what are some takeaways that we can gain again from John?
I love John's personality and his upbeat friendliness and how happy he is. And the one thing he says, ADHD or autism, I love the quote that John says about ADHD or autism or any other issue that someone may have. It's a gift. It's not a disability, it's a gift.
And it is a talent. People have, books have been written on twice exceptional people. John emphasizes that attribute in many people. Let's listen and learn together. John, it is great to have you back with us. For our listeners who are listening to you for the first time, I want to encourage our listeners, listen to the first broadcast where, John, you talk about your ADHD and how you, I'm going to use the term, harnessed that to start a very successful lumbering business. And you have gone on well beyond that, but you have learned how to deal with ADHD and maybe other forms of, I'll use the term neurodiversity. Our listeners are going to be very interested because it appears the more time goes, the more we learn about neurodiversity. And to some people, it's an anomaly. But John, I think it'd be good for you to describe with us how, if we are working with, as a parent, grandparent, caretaker, in whatever capacity, a person who is neurodiverse, how can we help them determine their strengths to define gainful employment? John, great to have you back with us.
Thanks, Ron. I really, really appreciate it. Look forward to our podcast.
Talk to us, John, about your life experience. And did you know always from the beginning, or did it take a process to determine that, yep, you are an entrepreneur and you know exactly how to go about it? Because I suspect, have some listeners with neurodiverse people who are just uncertain about themselves.
Yes. Now, to put it, look back, I was born in 1940, so I'm 84 years young, and in northeastern Holland. And things were not easy. As we all know, that's when the dictator Adolf Hitler decided to, in 1939, to invade Poland. And then my parents were married in 1938, and they were in love. And my dad worked in a lumber mill. They rented a beautiful little place, and very quickly they had a boy and a girl. And then what happened is the Germans, the Blitzkrieg happened, and my dad was called into the Dutch army. And the last they heard from him was that he was seen in Rotterdam just before the bombing. And for 5 years, they would not know if he lived or died. So things were very tough on my mom. And I started remembering part of the Second World War, and when I was 3.5 years old, hundreds of bombers overhead from the Allied forces bombing the war infrastructure of Germany in the northwest of close to the North Sea. And we would be able to, at night, we would stand on the flat deck outside our house and we look towards Germany and the sky be red from all the bombs. Hundreds, and as you know, as a pilot, bombing, you take of those big bombers and you take hundreds of them at the same time in the air, you will never forget it again. And I can still remember that 3.5 years old. So that's when it all started. Then there was no food. We as kids, when I was 4.5 years old in 1944, we used to go every morning with gunny sacks into the railroad yards and we picked up anything edible and burnable. And I still feel the hunger and the anxiety. And then as a consequence of all of that, I still am affected by PTSD and the inner child. Got actually counseling for the inner child when I was over 50 years old, very emotional actually. Never even knew what it was until somebody told me you should get a counseling for the inner child. And I did that. Amazing and very, very emotional. So, that all being said, academically, I will get to the question here, but academically, I was not a success story. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then the other part that I should mention, very, very important, that made a change to my life is that when we were liberated by the Canadian Army, it was April the 12th, 1945. And I knew from that point forward, when I grew up, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And as I said, academically, I was not a success story. And I was always wondering about myself. I'm different than a lot of other people. And then when I failed the school for the third time, grade 7, kids are hard on each other. And where the people that were with me went to colleges and university, I became a laborer at 12 and a half years old. And so my dad sent me to a friend of his that had a furniture factory, and they said, make him a furniture maker. And so that's what I did. I started working there first, go to school to become a furniture maker. But I still always knew I was different. And I kind of felt in a way, not in a bad way. I was always optimistic, a positive attitude. I had always a passion in all the things that I did, and I was a hard worker, no matter what I did. But I felt I had to start anew with nothing. And so uh, Canada was my dream. And so when I was 17, I was going to go to Canada, but then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2 years. Drafting was part of what we did in Holland, not anymore now, but then 2 years in the Air Force, then worked in the forest industry, and then decided to go to Canada when I was 23. I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and very little money. And I knew I wanted to go to British Columbia because that's where all the timber is, and build my own lumber mill to prove to me, not anybody else, that I was just as smart as anybody else. And so I went to Vancouver, couldn't speak the language. Fortunately, in the immigration department, there was a German fellow, and I told them I could speak some German. I told him what I wanted to do. He said, go to Prince George, British Columbia. Now, for our guests watching us from around the world, British Columbia obviously is on the west coast of Canada, beautiful province, big city, Vancouver. Where is Prince George? It is 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 800 kilometers for our friends in Europe. And so that's what I did. I went on the bus, 12, 14 hours. And when I came off the bus in Prince George, I'm there today, 60 years ago, I had my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had exactly $25.47. But what I had lots of attitude. I avoid negative, still do today. Passion, whatever I do, I give it a 224.5%. Work ethic. And I still, even today, I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed. I always think I'm late. And I always work hard. Even now, it's still 60 hours a week, whatever. And I give it all that I got. So, but still, a lot of people said to me, I started as a cleanup man, then very quickly became a supervisor, blah, blah, blah. And then before you know it, then I had a little lumber mill. And then people said to me, you're so successful. And I didn't feel that way. And then something happened that changed my life. I went to a bookstore and I picked up a book, and the title of the book was Driven to Distraction. It was written by Dr. Halliwell. I don't know why I picked it up. I still have it. I'm sitting in my boardroom of one of my companies today, but a lot of times when I'm podcasting, I'm in my studio. I have the actual book still there, and I usually show to my guest the book, Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell in 1993. I picked the book up in January 1997. And so when I opened the book, it was about ADHD. I never even heard of it. And the more I saw of it, the more I read, even standing in the store, and the store manager said, are we going to buy this? No, he didn't actually, but I did buy it. But I read quite a bit. And I said, I wrote in the book, that's me. And now I finally know. I wrote in Dutch, not in English, because I had implied that it was a mental disorder. I wrote in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am. And that's what I did. Dr. Halliwell has written 18 books, 5 on distraction, has dyslexia as well as ADHD. So do I. And so I call it a superpower. The more I found out about it, the more I started checking on Google and reading about it, the more I believed it's a superpower. It took me 5 years after I read the book and knew in my mind that I had ADHD, that I went to my doc, who was a personal friend, delivered our 2 daughters, and I walked into his office in 1962 when I was 62. And he said, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. And so we checked it out, and yes, I do. So the story here is, in particular, it took me from the time I was 12 and a half to the time I was 62, nearly 50 years, to understand who I was. And it is ADHD. It is not a liability. That was the first thing that obviously I found out. It was looked at as I believed from that point forward, it's a superpower. The key is to understand it and understand you, because you will be different, not negative, but in a positive way. And that it is a tool that can make you successful, but it certainly makes you different. I believed also, and also for a guest watching, I'm also a podcaster as you are, and my podcast number 203 is with Dr. Halliwell. And so when we had the discussion together, him and me, I suggested to him, he's the expert, obviously I lived it, and I suggested to him that I believe that the frequency of occurrence, initially I thought maybe 8% or so, it was suggested. I thought, and I suggested to Dr. Halliwell, it's more than 20%. He said, John, it's more than 25%. I agree with him. And then the other thing that I found is in all the businesses that I've done and the board of directors, I met a lot of smart people, entrepreneurs, business people. And I believe I suggested to Dr. Halliwell that of the more successful is the operative here, entrepreneurs and businessmen, I suggested to Dr. Halliwell, 50% of them are ADHD. He said, no, John, 75%. I agree with him. So that brings us to the question of it took me 50 years before I really knew who I was. And it changed my life from that point forward. Since that time, I've written 6 books. My companies have doubled, tripled in size, and obviously I'm a very active podcaster. I think we have 700,000 subscribers on YouTube. I'm the top 1% globally, and I'm not bragging about that, but in spite of it or because of it, because I'm ADHD. And a lot of people say to me, how do you do all this stuff that you're doing at 10 companies, and then you write books and you podcast and you a speaker? How do you do it all? I say ADHD, that's how I do it. And so for me, it has become an obligation to speak about it. And I intertwine it in most of the presentations that I do. They're about all kinds of different topics, but I usually include somewhat ADHD. And then I wrote a book about it, the ADHD Unlocked. And in some cases, like next month, I think I do a presentation for the province of Alberta, Canada, on their ADHD association. And I'm a good presenter, not in spite of, but because I'm ADHD. I have a very good memory. I've always been very, very good at numbers, but ADHD and dyslexia was part of my life. I'm not a good reader, but I have an excellent memory, and amazingly, and even at 84. So for all those that believe, and I've met over and over again, day after day after the day, that I interview people on podcasts, that even I did last week, in two cases, where somebody I'm podcasting said, I never told anybody this, but I believe I have ADHD as well. And so it has become that part for me that is important. If you have younger people in particular, at some point when you believe that it is, first and foremost, believe it's not a liability. It is not, it's neurodivergent, obviously, but it can be and is an asset once you understand it and make it work. Most of the successful people in the world, of all the big names that we know, are or likely are ADHD.
And we agree with virtually everything you're saying, John. I'm very curious. I've always, Marty and I have read your book. That and your board placard, $25.47, and it appears to me to be maybe in the order of priority: attitude, passion, work ethic. That you've got a great attitude, John. Have you always had a positive, forward-looking attitude, or was there at any point you acknowledge you had some stinking attitude?
I've always had a positive. I've gone through a few ups and downs in my book that I wrote, Against All Odds. I lay it all out on the line, and I've had challenges here and there, but my personality has always been positive attitude. I avoid negative. And then the other one is passion. When I do something, I give it 125%.
Let me ask you this. Did you, at any point in your life, even though you have a positive attitude, did you feel rejected at any time because of your ADHD? Was that a factor at any point?
So when I failed grade seven for the third time, so I was called everything, being too dumb and stupid, and the best I can do is become a laborer. But my parents always were supportive. My brother and sister were always supportive. But it's kind of funny about it in a way, tongue in cheek a little bit, is I did a presentation and somebody said to me, "Do you regret that all you did is got to grade seven?" I said, "Yeah, I still do even today. Still really, really bothers me." "Oh," I said, "I should have left earlier."
Yes. Yes.
Tongue in cheek, obviously a little bit. So that gets us to education. What is education? I always say, okay, what are we talking about? Formal, or are we talking about life?
Yeah.
So and that's very important. But knowing, so yeah, I was being looked down at. In Holland, the way it works is that no matter what you do, it always comes down to what's your education and where are your diplomas. Well, I didn't have any. So that also was a reason for me. I have to start over new again and go to the land where I dreamed of to go to Canada. And then I have to prove to me, not anybody else, that I'm just as good as anybody else. So very quickly when I came here, started as a cleaner man, piled lumber and very quickly I was the supervisor, then the superintendent. And then after 10 years here in 1975, I started Brink Forest Products, now part of the Brink group of companies. We have 10 different companies, and it's not about my success, but it's about for those that question themselves if either they or their children, their offspring, or whatever, if this is a liability, I say most definitely not. Understand it first. Make sure they, for a lot of times, if I would have listened to all the people, I would have gone down. And my personality didn't allow that. And although it made me move away from Holland to do that to Canada and to make it very hard for me. I felt I had to punish myself more or less. Start with nothing. And then either come back to Holland in a box or successful.
I'm picturing you through life, developed or you learned through some life experience, maybe some people with you, what your strengths are, what you're good at. And in the context of education, maybe you became determined enough to say to yourself, I really don't need to know about that because that's maybe for other people. You will go in this path to learn more about. Is that somewhat characteristic of your life, John?
No question. No question about it. Even when I was young already, early teens still, I would listen always to people that were successful in business. And I would go far and wide and listen to them as to what made them click and what made them successful and why. And then the other question, and maybe you asked me that when we were on another podcast, on my podcast that we did, is what were the three books that you took with you when you went to Canada? I still have them. And so the one was Management by Drucker in Dutch. And then the other one was Logical Thinking in Dutch. And then the other one was about Canada. And so it was always on my mind, how do I become good at managing my way? And so I was already from the time I was young, I was good at math and numbers, and I was good at writing, but not reading. And then the other part was that is somewhat interesting is that the other part that changed my life, I was not a good communicator. I had self-confidence and I could talk, interact with maybe two or three people at the same time in my companies, but not outside of that. And then what changed me there is that an ex-sister-in-law that I had said to me at one point in 1989, 1990, why don't you come with me to Toastmasters? I said, Toastmasters? What is that all about? She said, it's about communication skills. I said, is anybody going to ask me anything? She said, no, you just sit there and watch it. So that's what I did. And then in the middle of the meeting, it was interesting. In the middle of the meeting, somebody said, hey, John, tell us all about you. I said, oh my God, I'll never go back here. So, but I stayed for 10 years and I became a distinguished Toastmaster. And for those that are watching us around the world, Toastmasters is not unique to North America. There are Toastmaster clubs all around the world. Probably as we speak, there are probably 500,000 people involved directly in Toastmasters. There are probably tens of millions of people that at portions of it participated. It's usually smaller groups. Every community in North America has a club. Here in Prince George, we have probably 3 or 4. And it's about communication skills, not only about speaking, but even more importantly, become good listeners. And then secondly, become good at coordinating responses and speaking on your feet. And so all those elements brought into Toastmasters. And for me, it changed me. Hence, I became, and I can say that to you and to our friends, the millions of them watching us, and I'm not bragging about it because that's what Toastmasters is all about. That changed my life, and I'm now not fearful of it. No, I still have a little bit, when I give major presentations, there's a little bit of anxiety. That is normal. It has to be, otherwise I'm not good. But I'm very good at what I do. And if I make a presentation, they will never forget me. And in particular, not the way I present, because I don't read. I'm not good at that, not even my own writing. Is that I have an excellent memory and I work with my body. And so but the memory is because of ADHD. And numbers are because of that. So the elements I understand me, what works for me accidentally more than anything, in a way, the hard way likely, but it gave me enough of the benefits that I feel I have an obligation to share that with others. And the first one is it is not a liability. It can well be an asset. And for the younger people that maybe are affected by it or benefit from it, in my opinion, then the sooner they understand, that most, and I know that for a fact, successful people in the world are ADHD. So do not view it as a liability. Now, the other part about it is that I'm a great, and I wrote about that in the book as well, is that our traditional learning system has issues and do not recognize the fact that probably 30% of the global population ADHD, in my opinion, and so does Dr. Halliwell, is that we have to change gradually. Our teaching, learning models are changing, where we have to go more to what is referred to in my book. And I got that actually from a professor at the BC Technology Center here in British Columbia, that saying that we are looking at micro certification, meaning that if you being taught a skill sets of some sort, focus on the actual skill sets so that if you're 4 years in a classroom where they have all kinds of other stuff, maybe only 6 months of it are focused on that skill set that you have to learn to go forward. So make that the focus of teaching, and then the other parts become additives, but don't make them the driving factor. I see too often from people that are skilled and skill sets that they are pursuing, but what makes them not succeed is the additives, which are secondary, and in a lot of cases, they don't even ever use. And I believe gradually, slowly, we're starting to recognize that more, but we still got further to go. In the meantime, for me, what is important to share my experience with it and saying that it is a superpower, in my opinion, no question about it. So and it's available to anybody that has ADHD, that focus on the things that you would like to do and become very, very good at it. But do not view it as a liability.
Absolutely. Boy, we're right on target with you with that. You are a self-described not a good reader, and I'm going to interpret that as you're maybe slower than someone else, but you can read, obviously. And as you developed and you became aware of, and you knew within yourself, you have these skill sets, you focused on that, and you knew you could learn as much of that as you wanted to, and you can learn, you will learn, and there are things that are peripheral to that. I don't need to know. Let somebody else do. I'm repeating myself a little bit, but I, we do not agree at all to anybody who thinks that neurodiversity is a disability. It's nothing more than a description.
Exactly. And it's a category if you wish, and if they want to use it, that's fine. But I usually do. I say for and I've lived it, for 84 years, obviously. I call it a superpower.
Yep.
And so that if you have young people, and it happens for me virtually on a daily basis, if I can share with them, I should say this as well, you may find this interesting. So I did a presentation about 150, 200 people. I don't know how many people were there, and I usually on a topic, I forget even what that was. I think it was about lumber, but I always incorporate a bit of my ADHD because that's for me very important as well. So, and then I share with them that I failed grade three. And I said, I don't know anybody that failed grade three. And way in the back, a lady said, I failed grade three. I said, okay, just the two of us, but tongue in cheek. But the other part that I said, I failed grade seven 3 times. And then, and then the other part is that after I'm done with it and explaining what I see in it and the opportunities and the reason that it is a superpower in my mind, that by the time I'm done with my overall presentation, in particular that portion about the ADHD, there are a lot of people sitting in the room that say, damn, I wish I had it too.
Yep. So in as a caretaker, as a grandparent, in helping the neurodiverse find and develop their strengths, uh, is it a matter of time, John, that it may take a little bit of time, but as you observe them, you need to be aware of the different things that you seem to be good at. And I'm searching for the right words, but you're the right person to help the listener develop the strengths of the neurodiverse.
Yeah, be open about it, Ron. Like for me, in a lot of cases, tongue in cheek a bit, but at the same time, I make sure that they understand from the time I was 12 and a half years old and left grade seven for the third time, So it was challenging in a way. And, and as you already said, a lot of people made comments that, were negative. But my parents, my brother, sister, my sister used to say, I always remember that from the time I was only, 10 years old, maybe, or whatever, and saying, Jan is my Dutch name, Jan. Now everybody calls me John. I'm John, and say he will be the only multimillionaire in our family. Say, my God. So she believed, it's not about money, but saying confidence is that you are just as smart as all the other ones. So, and so to give confidence to young people in particular, that being slow in some of these things, not good readers necessarily, is not a liability. It is something that you can work on. And once you understand it, that maybe ADHD potentially is not a liability. Most successful people in the world are. And so from there on in, we still have to do a lot of work, in my opinion, is being more understood. And the traditional learning models that we have, that is work to be done. And micro certification is part of that, and I relate to that in my book. And but whenever the opportunity presents itself, I make somewhat tongue-in-cheek fun of it in a way, but it was not an easy route to go. I can assure you. And it was by coincidence that obviously I had the ability to start over again and go to the land of my heroes. I had a tough time as a young person. That served me well going forward. I appreciate now more than anything what we have. And then the other part, the I always knew I was a good writer, not a reader, but Toastmasters has helped me immensely as well as becoming. And I can say that to you because you put it into perspective. I know I'm a good communicator.
That is great. Talk to our listeners, put it a little more definition, or put a definition behind micro certification. And I'm very interested in knowing, our listeners are as well, how that correlates with confidence.
So micro certification is that we hear it over and over and over again, and we see it all over, is saying that we are having people in going even in colleges and university. And the I refer to it in my book, ADHD, is that by coincidence, Dr. Tom Romer, who is the Vice President Academia at British Columbia Institute of Technology, I sat in the airplane, and going, my overseas flight is that we have you find this funny. Yeah, an overseas, I go from Vancouver to Victoria. It's 12 minutes. It's the overseas flight, we call it. And I was sitting next to a fella, and he said, "Hey, John, you remember me?" I said, "Kind of, yeah." He said, "Well, I'm Tom Romer." And he said, "You wrote a book." He was referring to my other book, Against All Odds. And he said, "I really liked it," and blah, blah, blah. I said, "I'm writing another one." And what is that all about? I said, ADHD Unlocked. And I said, "It is nearly finished." And then we started in that little flight. We had the opportunity to talk about teaching, and he said, Dr. Tom Roma said, that we are working on a concept of micro certification. And he very quickly explained to me what it is, focusing on the skill sets that you like to train. Then this flight stopped, and then we got out. And by coincidence, the following week, I go there every weekend. I sat again in the plane. I sat in 5A, and he was sitting in 1C or something like that. And the plane was falling. I can't say, Tom, make sure you stop at the gate because I need to talk to you. And all the people said, "Well, what is going on?" But in any event, he stopped at the gate when he went out, and we talked about it then. And that's when he told me that he and other people in the Institute of Technology are working on micro certification. And what it does is focus on the skill sets that you want to train, that out of 4 years, maybe it take 4 months, and the other ones become additives. That to me, and I said to him before we did that, I said, I finished this book, but something is missing in this book in my mind before I finish it. Is that okay, John? That was good information, blah, 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 blah. In the book, where the question, John, is where do we go from here? And so that's when I reminded me of Tom. And that's why I said, I need you to read my book and then write a piece in that book about micro certification. I know several people now that are ADHD, even here in Prince George and millions probably other places, that are going through the schooling system, the traditional schooling system, are ADHD, slow learners, or something like that, that trying to become certified in skill sets that we desperately need. What comes to mind, nurses, and some others that are not able, even some that have been years in that profession, but not certified as nurses. And because of the additive courses that have nothing to do with anything like that, are failing. And so that's the part that bothers me about it, is that although we recognize 30% of the population, in my mind, and of the if you listen to On the Brink 203, Dr. Halliwell, and seeing how many people are successful, that part still is not being dealt with effectively.
And we are right on target with you. I hear you, and I may be mischaracterizing you. You're an advocate of homeschooling because you can tailor the learning to the strengths of that person. Again, everything else becomes peripheral.
Exactly. And
Wow.
but we have a major shortage, and I believe that is the case in North America, in the USA, as well as in Canada. And with the companies that I have a major shortage of skill sets that are being taught. But the reason that it is so complex, complicated, is all the additives that does not create the skill sets that I need for our companies. And that has been that way. I've had the Brink group of companies for nearly 50 years. And that was the problem the first day, still is the problem today.
Let me ask you, in that context, if the person has the right attitude, can you bring them in and just say to them, we will train you right here?
I say this: bring me attitude, passion, work ethic, but follows is success.
Yep.
No question about that.
Great.
That's what I need. I don't care how much education they have. If they don't have those, they will not be successful.
Right on. Boy, John.
Is there a course for the micro certification? If to
Yeah.
get the certification, what do you do?
Yeah, so what I think, Marty, is that look it up on Google, but some structures have like even the one that I told you about, the British Columbia Institute of Technology is doing work on it. I don't know if they have formally done anything other than when I wrote my book 2 years ago, they were working on it. So if it isn't, look up it, and then it's certainly something that should be there. But what it does, a little bit upsets the status quo because it would change the whole teaching model. And a lot of people have a direct interest in not doing that necessarily, because all of a sudden, if you can create a different learning model that teaches first on the academics or the certification of the skill sets that you need, and the other ones are secondary. You don't have to sit in the classroom for 4 years or 3.5 years to learn about. You can do that in other ways, like what Ron suggested in homeschooling or whatever it needs, but it doesn't need that structure for it. It's so that I'm saying that, especially colleges, universities, maybe that focus on skill sets in particular, that model may no longer be effective in terms of creating the skill sets that we need in industry and other areas in North America, at least, and I believe globally.
We are right on target with you. John, you've got such a great outlook, and we want our listeners to hopefully reach out to those who are neurodiverse to help them with their confidence, and with the right attitude, surrounded by the right people, we can help them focus on where they have strengths, and those people will be very successful. John, thank you so much for passing on everything that you have learned, and I would hope our listeners become totally engaged.
Thanks, Ron and Marty. It was fun to be part of your podcast, and look forward to staying in touch, and good luck.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
We look forward to continuing our dialogue with you.
We'll do that. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life's experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.